When I had this idea for a documentary on Jewish poverty and finally decided to do it in New York, one of the first things I heard through the kindergarten network, also known as Facebook, was there are no poor Jews in New York. This cliché that Jews got money is more than popular. A simple look on Google will show the huge amount of Jewish charities. I've never heard about a full documentary solely on this subject. There are a few books, some press articles, but not a full documentary. Let's find out if Jews got money.
I know of cases that rabbis have told me personally, even in my own community, of people who leave every day with a briefcase but haven't worked for a year or 2 years. They don't want their children to know. They don't want to be embarrassed in the community. And synagogues are often strapped because they cannot meet the demands of their own congregants when other members of the congregation are not aware of their financial straits. I'm Malcolm Hoenlein. I'm the CEO and Executive Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, which is the umbrella for more than 51 national Jewish organizations. We address the national and international concerns of the American Jewish community. We are a liaison to the White House, to foreign leaders. We work with a wide variety of issues, including the United Nations, issues of terrorism, the delegitimization of Israel, the U.S.-Israel relationship, endangered Jewish communities, etc. And I've been here for 26 years as the Chief Executive Officer.
It's less of a secret today, but there are still people in the Jewish community who simply are surprised when they realize that there are poor Jews. There are some people who believe that poor Jews are poor because it's a choice that they make. And they don't understand that we, like every other community, have people who are substance abusers, people who are mentally ill, people who are victims of domestic violence, but we also have people who are frail, who are old, people who are unlucky, who have problems that occur that create difficult times for them. There are people who are dedicated caregivers to parents who've lost jobs because of that. So there are lots of different reasons why people are poor, but it's not really because of choice. My name is William Raffvogel. I run the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty, which is a New York charity that serves people in need, whether they be poor, working poor, even middle-class needy.
I had a situation because I was in a fire. I went to a shelter. I was there about 14 months, and it was very scary. And I ended up with no furniture. So I've been living out of storage boxes.
The thing is that being alone and trying to manage on my own at my age is quite difficult.
Last year in 2011 we did 380 burials. I think it's something the Jewish community doesn't know that much about, that for some Jewish people there's such poverty that they can't provide for their end-of-life needs. My name is Amy Koplow and I'm the Executive Director of the Hebrew Free Burial Association. And I've been with the association since 2000. It was started in 1888 in the Lower East Side in New York, and it was started to help provide burials for poor Jewish people. And at that point in time, there were thousands of immigrants coming just by the boatloads to New York from Eastern Europe. And they came with very little, had a very hard life here. It wasn't what they had thought it would be.
People came to this country thinking that there was gold in the streets. Those were the rumors they heard in Europe. There wasn't any gold in the street, there was poverty.
People were dying from diseases that now can be treated with antibiotics and vaccines and things. They were dying in industrial accidents. Many were dying even from starvation. These immigrants really didn't have the resources when a family member died, and they turned to this organization There was a huge need. And in the first 4 years of their existence, these gentlemen bought graves in cemeteries, in a couple of cemeteries in the New York area. And then it became clear with over 1,000 burials a year that they really needed their own cemetery.
I am Shmuel Plafker. I'm the rabbi for the Hebrew Free Burial Association. My most obvious and public position that I officiate at all the burials taking place here at Mount Richmond Cemetery.
We bury everybody. We just always have to confirm that the person was Jewish, but that's really all that's needed. The person didn't need to even have gone to a synagogue once in his or her life. Some people have Jewish names, some people don't. But what unites them is their faith of birth and their poverty.
Jewish poverty is not an oxymoron. I think the Jewish people is a rich people. We have a rich heritage. We have rich values. We have a Torah which gives us great wealth. But when you talk in financial terms, there is a mythology about the status of Jews that associates Jews with wealth. And in fact, here in New York, a significant percentage of the Jewish community, estimated perhaps at 20%, some even more, live at or below the poverty level.
I think people who have a stereotype in their mind about Jews, all Jews are rich, will feel it's an oxymoron, but anybody really involved in the Jewish communal service field knows that there is poverty, and some of it's really very, very severe.
There are, as I said, a large number of elderly Jews, certainly in proportion to the population, as opposed to, let's say, other sectors of the society where the number of young versus old is higher. The proportion here is different in the Jewish community, where you have a larger number of old, and now we have the elderly old, who are higher in the higher age brackets, thank God, but the demands that they place on the system are great as well.
This organization was created in 1972, but we know from different stories, biblical stories and midrashic stories, that there were needy Jews throughout the ages, and that people gave charity, that people set off parts of their field for the poor and for the needy back in the biblical times. So there was always Jewish poverty. In 1972, my predecessors, my board's predecessors, came together to try to help at what at the time were abandoned Jewish elderly who were living in communities where everybody else had fled, but because they were too poor, probably also because they were too elderly and frail, they couldn't leave. And so the job in 1972 was to help try to address their needs, get them the food they need, the services they need, so that they could have a decent quality of life. And that's evolved over time.
Paul Cowan went to investigate Jewish poverty on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And he found a lot. He began to write about it and wrote articles about it to tell the broader world that there are pockets of Jewish poverty in the Lower East Side, which he covered. Perhaps Brownsville was an old Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn that had become African American, but there was still some old Jewish people living there that couldn't go with the others as neighborhoods changed. Paul Cowan was the one who introduced us to the concept that there is Jewish poverty. And we see that Jewish poverty has to be addressed, not when they die, but when they're alive, to help. There are organizations such as Met Council that helps people get along in life. If they do die, of course, that's why we're here, to make sure that every Jew receives a decent Jewish burial, a respectful burial.
It's shocking when we find out that there's people who die who have $100 to their name, that's it, or no money to their name, or Jews who are eating in soup kitchens in churches, Jews who are homeless, Jews who live in single room occupancy hotels, which is very much a New York thing. It's kind of like public housing for the very poor. And those are a lot of the people that we deal with. And some of our cases are people who had a successful career at some point in their life and the career went sour.
There are people, whether they be frail elderly people, families in crisis, young people at risk, who are desperately in need of help. Some of them are below the poverty level, some are in the area of what we call working poor, and others are people who suffered in the recession since 2008, have lost jobs, have been able to get other jobs, but that pay much less. But they're not poor, or they may not even be considered working poor. Let's say they make $75,000 a year, but they used to make $200,000 a year, and they've been able to downsize themselves, but they simply can't keep up. And those are an additional population that we try to serve.
I've always had a viable life. I mean, I had a business going for me, I had a lovely apartment, I had things going, and all of a sudden one day, it wasn't going. I had sold my business to my son, and he was paying me out monthly. His main client was the observatories in the top of the World Trade Center. At 9/11, when the tragedy happened, he went out of business the very next day. There was really no place for me to go at that particular time because I had health problems. I had a part of my lung removed. The other lung is I have emphysema. I have a heart problem. I have a pacemaker, and I have about a dozen other things going for me. So and reaching a point of being 70, I wasn't really an employable person. I mean, this is the way it is.
And then at a certain time in their life, the pension wasn't there for them, investments that they made weren't there for them. Something went wrong.
Thank God today we hardly even hear of children dying. But going back 100 years, 80 years, 70 years, it was not uncommon for children to die at a very early age, even as infants. What we take for granted today in our world, not the third world, but in the society we live, did not exist. Prenatal care, warm apartments. Most of these children who were buried here were the children of immigrants who lived in cold water flats. They couldn't afford it, they didn't have the money, they didn't get heat. And the kids were born, the mothers perhaps did not take care of themselves when they were pregnant. So the children were already born without the proper nutrition. The kids were born sick, and the environment they lived in. I dare say, I don't have any statistics, that most families lost a child somehow along the way in the 19-teens and 20s and 30s. I believe the day was March 25th, 1911. There was a horrific fire that took place at a factory called the Triangular Shirtwaist Factory. And on late afternoon, fire broke out. Now, when you read the history of the period, there was a lot of agitation to improve the working conditions for the sweatshops where people worked. And this fire was the straw that broke the camel's back. The doors were barred, so people couldn't sneak out another way and take home material to work on their own. And the problem when the doors did open up, they opened inward, not outward. People were clamoring to try to get out. And some people jumped to their death, and others were burned alive. 144 people died in that fire. We here at Hebrew Free buried 22 of those people. 18 were young women. The ages were 17, 18. We saw the monuments. And 4 were men who were all in their 20s, and perhaps one, I believe, was in his early 30s.
This is not just an American issue. We have Jewish poor in Israel, something also that people did not want to discuss, officials did not want to discuss. I had very tough meetings sometimes, and I understood because, you know, with a young country, you don't want the image of being, of poverty, and in fact today Israel is booming and that its economy is solid, increasingly solid. But at the same time, you have hundreds of thousands of people below the poverty level, tens of thousands of children who still are hungry at night. I am involved in a project that will feed 30,000 children, Jewish, Arab, Bedouin, every day in the southern part of Israel. 30,000 hot meals a day through Meir Panim of the United States, but it is only one of a number of organizations in Israel that are addressing the poverty issue. And in part, because the government refused to, or others refused to deal with this in the way that they should have, it invites abuses, it invites duplication, and I would like to see a more open approach to the issue and more frankness about it so that it can be dealt with in a more systemic and systematic way.
The newest face of Jewish poverty has been since 2008 and the economic collapse. And that's been a younger face, and it's been a face of family, of people who otherwise have managed to stay out of poverty, or if they fell into poverty, it was a temporary thing and they weren't in it long term. It was just several months until they were able to create a business, find a better job, and then get back on the road out of poverty. But that young family is the new face of poverty, but that young family also has, not far from it, a relative, a grandparent, or somebody else who's struggling, who needs help. It may have a relative or a family friend who's coming here from the former Soviet Union, who may be here from Israel. In some cases, we have Israelis who are here in New York who are both legal and illegal. Some who've got visas, and others who have visas that expired. The ones who have visas that expired are almost impossible help. The only way we can help them really is through our food programs, because they're not eligible for any kind of benefits and they can't legally be employed.
I think there's an intensification of poverty, and we have a very effective organization here in New York, and some other communities have, through the Jewish Family Services or other specialized agencies, providing assistance to Jewish poor, trying to find job placements, trying to help in various other ways for those who have become unemployed. You know, the downturn in the economy affected Jews as it did everyone else. And again, it's because people don't perceive of Jews as being in the Jewish community being in this category, but in fact, I think it has disproportionately affected some parts of the Jewish community. And anecdotally, that is at least the reports that I hear about the number of cases. We lived through a luxury period when unemployment was almost unheard of in the community. Today, we hear of widespread poverty.
Since 2008, our numbers have been climbing. I would say it's a combination of the recession, where people may have had the funds to get buried before the recession and people lost their money. We've also had more and more requests for people who have graves in other cemeteries but lost the money to get there. Here, when we take care of somebody, we provide the grave and the grave opening and the funeral services.
In the last few years, with the economy taking a nosedive, everyone has been affected. And people who perhaps would not have come to Hebrew Free 5 years earlier find they need to use our services. Usually there's a snowball effect. Someone gets sick, they perhaps have to stop working, they lose their benefits, perhaps they're trying to go out of network for insurance purposes, they go trying to find a physician who does not accept their insurance, but they want to do what they can for their loved one, and they deplete their savings. And they need our services to help them bury their loved one.
There are some Holocaust survivors who live in poverty. There are agencies that seek to address that, and specialized ones that reach out to survivors. We also have a large number of Russian immigrants who came here, may not have the support system and financial resources.
We have Holocaust survivors that come to our 4 soup kitchens around the city, who come to our food pantries. There are Holocaust survivors, probably hundreds of them, that we provide home care for. And the home care that we provide for them is provided for a poor population of Holocaust survivors. We also have some Holocaust survivors who are above poverty that we provide home care for, but the majority of them are people who are poor.
Poverty has really been synonymous with Jews in New York, and traditionally in this country we thought of survivors, Holocaust survivors, as those who came right after the war, you know, in the late 40s and in the 50s. But now there's a whole new kind of them, and those are Holocaust survivors from the former Soviet Union, who survived there and then came to this country. They couldn't even take passports with them because in the early days before the fall of the Soviet Union, if they left the country as refugees, they were stateless and they were not allowed to take their passports.
In 2009, we did have a man who was a Holocaust survivor who had a reasonable retirement saved away, but lost it all in the financial collapse, who came to us looking for a job, was ready to apply as a porter in a building, 69-year-old man, and which is a relatively young Holocaust survivor, and he was in halfway decent shape. And he was able to do certain things. Fortunately, we found him a job as a clerk in a law firm where he wouldn't have to be schlepping things and engaged in manual labor. But the idea that this person who worked hard in his life, put away money, was now having to, at the age of 69, be willing to do a job like being a porter in a building is just so sad. Fortunately, he's not in a situation where he needs home care. He actually can get around and can make a living. But it's so tragic to think about the hundreds, if not thousands, of Holocaust survivors who are poor and who are struggling to make ends meet and who do go to food pantries and who do need help with the activities of daily living, to shower, to be fed, to make sure they take the medicines, to be able to go out for a walk. It's a real struggle to watch them.
I think years ago, like everything, anything that made someone feel uncomfortable was not discussed. But today we're a little more open society, and Jewish poverty is being discussed. And because we try to reach out and try to help people. Many of these people are proud. They were raised not to take charity. They were raised to, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it. And that's a good model to live by. But certainly these people have contributed to society. Many of them are elderly. They worked in this country. They paid into the Social Security system. They deserve to be helped. Trouble is sometimes they're too proud to ask. And you have to find these people, convince them that they're entitled. They're not taking anything they're not entitled to. They worked hard and they're entitled to receive assistance.
I wouldn't say they're invisible, but I would say in the kind of well-to-do pockets of the Jewish community in New York, people help out, they give tzedakah. Some people really roll up their sleeves, but I don't think they necessarily come face to face with it unless they really put themselves out there and are the ones who are physically involved in the food drive or come here to the cemetery and volunteer to form a minyan, a quorum at a burial and hear about the person who passed away.
Can it be talked about? Increasingly, yes. And again, as I said, we have to do everything possible to remove the stigma so that people aren't afraid, aren't reluctant to seek assistance that is available for fear that it will affect their standing in community or their image or their children. And so that's one part. The invisibility remains. But we have now networks of soup kitchens that the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty, which I mentioned before, is an outstanding institution, really a pioneer in this regard, in addressing the issue, and I think in making it easier for people in need to be able to go to a quality place, not a degrading experience. I have gone to visit some of the soup kitchens with Mr. Rapfogel and with other people, Henry Ornstein, who helped underwrite them. And you see the way that they are approached, the dignity with which they are approached, I think is really quite remarkable. Jews do not like to be dependent on the state. Jews tend to be independent, and there is a stigma attached to getting certain assistance. I hope that we have overcome that.
I'm used to giving and not accepting. So I feel peculiar sometimes when they bring the food into me. That young fellow, he's very handsome. He's very pleasant, and he brings the food to me, which I feel honored that they could remember me. They make me feel good, that I'm not alone and that I have somebody.
There's a cliche that can be said, the Jews have money, meant in a positive way. It's that they work hard, that they're creative and innovative, that they come up with solutions to problems, and they're able to earn money. And then there is a Jews got money, like Jews control the banks, Jews control the media. That's not meant in a positive way.
The notion that all Jews have money is absolutely incorrect. For every Jew who makes it and becomes successful financially, there are probably 20, 30, 50 Jews who never make, 100 Jews, I don't know, who never make it. Just keep their head above water, and some, as we see here, never keep their head above water.
Unfortunately, Jews have been subject of accusations, and Jews have been taxed for all of our history. We've been subjugated, and the wealth of the Jews became an easy target for landlords or fiefdoms or kings or others who tax the Jews in order to allow them to live, even in countries like England and France, etc. So there is a very long history. It's a canard. It's a accusation. There are many books written about the subject.
You know, it goes way back to when Jews first got involved in loaning money in the Middle Ages, because there wasn't anything else for them to do. They weren't allowed to have trades or be a guild member, or any other ways. They weren't allowed to own land. Any other ways that you could make a living. They European rulers kind of left the worst jobs for them, or these jobs that Christians didn't want to do, trades that Christians didn't want to do, and Jews ended up lending money, and I think that's where this all kind of came from.
Tell me, there are no poor Catholics, and no poor Protestants, no poor Muslims, and although all Catholics have money, and why stereotype?
There are anti-Semitic assertions attached to this about Jews and money. That's been true throughout the ages, and so there are those who use it for negative and hateful purposes.
These stereotypes are wrong. People want to believe them because they want to hold on to keeping Jews in a negative light.
There are people out there, among them Minister Farrakhan, who likes to believe that the Jews control the world and that the Jews mean nothing but harm to the African American community, which has been proven time and time again. Nothing could be further from the truth.
This country has opportunities, and you're willing to work hard, put in long hours, sleepless nights. You may make money, you may not. The free market system allows anyone to try. You may do well, you may not do well, but you could try. And Jewish people, as a group, have taken the opportunity of the United States. Gave them the opportunity that some of them didn't have it in Europe, or maybe Sephardic Jews from Syria didn't have it there. The opportunity to work hard, put in long hours, sweat on your brow, and perhaps you'll be successful. They tried it. Some have and some haven't. But right away, people say, oh, all the Jews have money. No, all Jews don't have money, but they were willing to work. If you want a 9-to-5 job and come home and watch television, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very honorable way of making a living. But don't castigate others who are willing to gamble and take that chance. All Jews don't have money. But for those who worked hard, it doesn't matter, we're Italian, we're Poles, we're Irish, it doesn't matter. Yes, this country gives you the opportunity. But it goes back to the anti-Semitism again.
I think there are Jews who have money, and we have many Jews. New York is probably the wealthiest Jewish community in the diaspora in Jewish history. So there's a lot of Jewish money. And I think on some level I'm very proud that there are Jews who have money. On another level, I wish they would look to take care of their brethren more. I think Jews have come to a point where we're accepted. The walls have come down. Jews can serve on the boards of the opera, on the boards of every museum, on any board they want to serve. And they give substantial money to those charities, and thank God, and that's great. But I think they shouldn't forget their roots and where they came from. And I think the most important message to give to people who do have money is there, but for the grace of God, you could be a client.
Tikkun olam is also a precept, so to speak, and that's repairing the world. It's participating, it's doing something that's going to better the world, to make the world more of a whole place.
Jews in America have been successful, there's no doubt. But if you see where their conscience lies, in their voting patterns, in their contributions, in all aspects really, they remain committed to the same values. Wealth is not a goal for us. It's a means. It's a means to do good. It's a means to help Tikkun Olam, to change the world and to make it a better place for everyone. And Jews give not just to Jewish causes. They give to every cause. And we know that a world that is indifferent to anyone will be indifferent ultimately to everyone.
The Jewish community helps itself. I mean, yes, there are Jews who have money, but I'm sure in a majority of cases, the Jews who have money turn around and they help those who are less fortunate.
Many of the charities that serve the African American community, some of their biggest supporters come from the Jewish community. The civil rights movement, there were Jews who marched and died in the civil rights movements.
I've been on a job slump. I've been on unemployment for a while, and I've been looking for a job.
I thought that, I'm going to shelter, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No, it was totally new to me. It was not just that easy. If it was that easy, I wouldn't have been here that long.
I have a feeling that it boils down to, by the grace of God, it could be me or Baruch Hashem, meaning it can happen to anyone.
One of the reasons people have the impression of Jewish wealth, aside from whatever statistical substantiation there is because Jews give disproportionately. When you look at all of the institutions that carry Jewish names, museums, hospitals, educational institutions, etc., Jews give, and this is, I think, proven over many, many years, disproportionate to other communities, and therefore create perhaps the impression that they have more money. It's just that they give more money from the money they have.
We help everybody. Our mission is to help anybody in need, based on helping those Jews that we started helping in 1972. But when anybody comes to us, even if it's for kosher food, we will serve. You don't have to be Jewish to get kosher food.
Tzedakah is a very important mitzvah, a positive commandment, charity to help the poor.
The word tzedakah is composed of the 4 Hebrew letters, Tzadik, Dalet, Kuf, Hey. Now, the root of that word is the first 3 letters, Tzadik, Dalet, Kuf, which is tzedek. Tzedek means righteousness. In the vernacular, we use the word charity. But when we go to the root of the Hebrew word tzedakah, it's more than charity, it is righteousness.
Tzedakah is a concept of helping to restore a certain degree of justice to people who need it. And so there are people out there who are not blessed, and they are blessed maybe with other things, but financially they're not blessed. And we can help be an equalizer. And by providing those people with the tzedakah of others, their lives can change in a way that people believe is righteous.
That is the right thing to do. It is the proper thing to do, to share. We are told to take 1/10 of our savings and share with those who have less. If someone has $1 to their name and they put 10 cents into the Yiddish term of the pushkin, the charity box, they are literally giving 1/10 of what they own to somebody who has less. And that's what tzedakah really is.
It's really spelled out very clearly in the Torah in numerous places about paying somebody, helping somebody, giving of what you earn to others, not taking advantage of those who have less than you do. Tzedakah comes in, there's like kind of like a rainbow of what tzedakah can encompass, but tzedakah helps you be a better person in, I would say, traditionally in Judaism. We also give tzedakah in memory of somebody who we lost, and not just when the person dies, but kind of continuously, almost as long as then you're alive. That's a way of remembering and honoring the person to help somebody else. Chesed Shel Emet is an act of loving kindness. Chesed is a good, a kind act. And traditionally in Judaism, Chesed Shel Emet means helping bury somebody, helping provide for somebody's last needs. And it's the highest chesed. It's really the heavyweight of chesed, so to speak, because you're doing a good deed for somebody who can never reciprocate. If you help bury somebody, that person can't come back and help you out when you need help later in your life. So it really is a selfless, kind act.
If not for this organization being out there, it would have been very tough for us to find any other option. We didn't know what to do. We had no idea whom to talk and what to do, right? Especially so everything would be done according to the Jewish tradition. And this organization helped us with everything.
My father, his dream was to come to America for better life. It's said that he didn't achieve it fully, only buried here, and not even walked one street in New York. That's why our people struggled for many, many thousands of years to continue and to survive and to show what we really are.